Daniel Carter, a powerful CEO, walks into his own bank, disguised as a regular customer, only to face the prejudice he fought to overcome all his life. What happens when a man of success is denied service by the very system he created? Stick around to find out, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. The sun pierced through the tall glass windows of the bank's main entrance, reflecting off the marble floors in sharp, golden shards. Daniel Carter stood in the doorway, his figure framed by the grandeur of an institution he had spent years building. Yet today, he was not Daniel Carter, the renowned CEO. He was just another man in a worn leather jacket and jeans, blending in like any other customer. The muted chatter of clients echoed off the high ceilings, interspersed with the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. It was a world he knew inside out, but from this perspective it seemed foreign and different. He inhaled deeply, letting the sterile air fill his lungs. Beneath his composed exterior tension simmered. It wasn't the fear of being recognized that unsettled him. It was the memories this moment stirred. He thought back to his youth, to the days when banks were cold, hostile fortresses that denied people like him even the smallest dignity. A sharp metallic voice broke his reverie. Next, the cashier barked, her eyes already skipping past him to another customer. Daniel stepped forward, yet her gaze didn't shift. He waited a moment, then cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said softly but firmly. She barely glanced up. "I'll be right with you," she said, her tone dismissive. Daniel clenched his jaw, but smiled thinly. "Be patient, observe, learn." His mantra echoed in his mind like a distant drum. He noticed the side glances, how other customers dressed in business attire moved through the line with ease. He had always known, but now he would see it firsthand. "I'm here for something more than a withdrawal today," he thought. "I'm here for the truth." The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a cold, bluish hue over the teller desks. Daniel leaned against the counter, his calm mask still intact. Minutes passed, but the teller seemed more interested in rearranging her paperwork than helping him. Finally, she signaled toward a tall, broad-shouldered man in a gray suit who was approaching from the office area. The man's polished shoes echoed ominously across the tiled floor. "Mark Ellison, branch manager," the man announced, extending a hand with the stiffness of someone who didn't really want it to be shaken. Daniel took the hand firmly. "Daniel Carter, I'm here to withdraw funds from my account." Ellison gave him a once-over, eyes narrowing at the casual attire, the absence of a business briefcase, the lack of the right look. His lips curled slightly in amusement, as if this were a joke. "Funds, huh? May I ask how much you're looking to withdraw?" Daniel remained calm. $40,000. The smirk vanished. Ellison's eyes hardened. $40,000. We'll need to verify everything thoroughly. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Carter. Requests of that size are unusual. Unusual for whom? Daniel asked quietly, his voice steady but pointed. Patterson crossed his arms. "Just following protocol. We've had some incidents." Daniel took a breath. He had expected resistance, but the thinly veiled suspicion stung more than he had anticipated. Patterson turned to a nearby security guard and gave a subtle nod. "Wait here. I'll be back after we run some checks," Patterson said, his tone now openly distrustful. As Patterson walked away, Daniel exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about protocol. It never had been. Daniel sat in a cold, rigid chair near the corner of the lobby, his fingers resting lightly on his knees. The bank had returned to its regular hum of quiet transactions, but he was now under a subtle microscope. Customers whispered as they passed by. Employees exchanged glances filled with unspoken judgment. He could feel the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on him. The irony wasn't lost. He was surrounded by the very structure he had built, and yet in their eyes he was a stranger. He heard Ellison's voice barking orders from behind a glass door, talking about verifications and security risks. Daniel closed his eyes momentarily, grounding himself. Images of his younger self surfaced, a teenager standing outside a bank branch in his old neighborhood, being told he couldn't open an account because of insufficient documentation. He had promised himself then that he would change that system someday. But here he was again, facing the same walls of prejudice. "Excuse me, sir," A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to see a young teller, nervously holding a clipboard. "Would you like some water while you wait?" Daniel studied her face. Unlike Ellison, she seemed uncertain rather than condescending. He offered a gentle nod. "That would be nice. Thank you." As she walked away, the entrance door swung open. Rachel Donovan, the regional director, strode in, her heels clicking assertively against the floor. Her presence commanded immediate attention. She was a tall woman with sharp features and a confident grace, wearing a navy blazer that marked her authority. Several employees straightened in their seats, their casual conversations abruptly ceasing. "Good afternoon," Rachel greeted the receptionist. "I'm here for a scheduled inspection. Is Ellison around?" The receptionist hesitated before pointing toward the manager's office. Rachel's eyes scanned the room, pausing when they met Daniel's. She blinked, recognition dawning. In an instant her demeanor softened. She walked briskly over to him. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" she asked, lowering her voice as she leaned slightly closer. Daniel gave her a faint smile. "Testing the waters. Seems a bit colder than I expected." Rachel frowned, glancing toward Ellison's office. "Cold is an understatement. What happened?" "Let's just say I've experienced some interesting customer service today. Ellison doesn't seem too fond of large withdrawals from certain customers." Rachel's jaw tightened. She didn't need more details to understand. The lines were already drawn. She straightened and gestured toward the manager's office. "Come with me," she said firmly. The walk across the lobby felt like a slow march to judgment. Employees watched with widened eyes as Rachel led Daniel through the doors marked manager's office. Ellison was seated at his desk, reviewing paperwork. He barely looked up until Rachel's voice cut through the room. "Mark, could you explain what's going on here?" Ellison looked between Rachel and Daniel, confusion giving way to alarm. He stood abruptly. I was just following standard procedures. Mr. Carter made a large withdrawal request, and I needed to ensure everything was verified. Did you now?" Rachel crossed her arms. "And at what point were you going to tell me that you were holding up the CEO of this bank?" Ellison's face paled. He stammered incoherently, his earlier confidence crumbling. "Key CEO? I wasn't aware." Daniel finally spoke, his tone calm but unyielding. "No, you weren't. And that's exactly the problem, Mark. You didn't see a client today. You saw a threat. You assumed based on how I looked, didn't you?" That wasn't my intention," Ellison muttered, his gaze dropping to the floor. "It may not have been your intention, but it was your impact," Daniel replied, letting the silence that followed speak louder than any reprimand. Rachel stepped in. "This isn't just about today. We've had other reports about behavior like this. Daniel's presence exposed something we can't ignore any longer." Ellison sank into his chair, visibly deflated. Daniel exhaled slowly. He wasn't here to destroy anyone's career, but there were lessons that needed to be learned, lessons he had been forced to learn the hard way. "I believe in accountability," Daniel said, "but I also believe in change. This is an opportunity for you, Mark, if you are willing to confront your biases and grow from them." Ellison nodded numbly. The room fell into a heavy, contemplative silence. Rachel broke it. "Let's talk next steps. This isn't just about one branch anymore." As they exited the office, Daniel caught sight of the young teller who had offered him water earlier. She gave him a hesitant smile. He returned it, knowing that real change started with moments like these, small significant shifts in how people saw one another. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense, weighed down by unspoken realizations. Daniel stood by the window, looking out at the busy street below. His reflection in the glass seemed distant, as if watching the scene unfold from another world. Behind him, Ellison fidgeted in his chair while Rachel prepared her notes. The other department heads connected via video call, their faces a mixture of curiosity and unease. "Let's get to the heart of this," Daniel began, his voice steady but firm. "What happened today was not an isolated event. It's a symptom of something much deeper in our organization." Ellison shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Carter, please let me finish," Daniel said, raising a hand. For too long, we've allowed unconscious biases to dictate how we treat people. What I experienced today wasn't just about me. How many other clients have walked through our doors and faced the same silent wall of suspicion? Rachel stepped in, her tone measured. We've had reports from other branches about similar behavior. This isn't just about one bad day. We need systemic change. The room grew quieter. Ellison rubbed his temples, visibly grappling with his own defensiveness. I thought I was following protocol, but maybe I wasn't seeing the bigger picture. Daniel turned to face him directly. That's the point. Protocol shouldn't be a weapon to dehumanize people. It should serve to protect and empower them. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The weight of his message was palpable, each person in the room reflecting on their role in maintaining the status quo. We're going to implement a comprehensive training program, Daniel continued. Not just a few sessions on diversity, but an overhaul of how we engage with clients. Compliance, empathy, respect, and trust need to be at the core of our operations. Ellison nodded slowly. I understand, and I want to do better. Daniel gave a short nod. That's what I expect from everyone here. We're in a position of power. It's our responsibility to lead by example. The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of purpose. As Daniel walked out of the room, he felt a quiet resolve settling within him. Change was never easy, but today a crucial step had been taken. The evening air was crisp as Daniel stepped out of the bank's main entrance. The towering glass facade reflected the fading sunset, casting an orange glow that softened the imposing structure. For a moment he stood still, letting the cool breeze wash over him. The events of the day replayed in his mind, the looks of suspicion, the dismissive tone, Ellison's breakdown of excuses. It was an exhausting cycle he had seen too many times before, yet this time something felt different. He hadn't exploded in anger, hadn't made a spectacle. He had taken control of the narrative and planted seeds of reflection in the minds of those around him. Sometimes the path to change wasn't loud and destructive. It was deliberate and measured. His phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. The first phase of the training initiative was already being rolled out. He smiled faintly, knowing that the work had just begun. But for now, he allowed himself a brief moment of peace. Daniel turned toward his car, the streetlights flickering on as night fell. In the distance, he saw people entering and exiting other banks, ordinary customers, just like he had been today. He silently hoped their experiences would soon be better than his had been. Have you ever experienced something like this? Moments when you were judged by your appearance or denied fair treatment? Share your story in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Together, we can shed light on these issues and inspire change. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories change. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support helps us continue spreading awareness and hope.